From June the 27th to the 29th, 2013, the African Institute for the Mathematical Sciences, AIMS, held their first ever Global Alumni Reunion titled Transforming Africa Through Knowledge-Based Enterprise at the Muizenberg Pavilion in Cape Town, South Africa. This event brought together 231 participants from 6 continents and 44 countries, comprising leaders in education, research institutes, governments, the scientific community, civil society organizations and AIMS alumni. 31 African countries were represented, with 128 alumni from all graduating classes since 2003, and all AIMS centres, Ghana, Senegal and South Africa. 43% of the participants were women. This event linked current and future leaders in development and the mathematical sciences to address how mathematical sciences education can transform the African continent. The event kicked off with a performance by the Happy Feet dance troupe of South Africa. They performed a traditional gumboot dance that was created by miners in South Africa during apartheid as an alternative to drumming, which was restricted by the authorities. This was the perfect beginning to illustrate how innovation and social movements can triumph oppression. A phrase that recurred throughout the event was critical mass, which was the perfect term to describe the nature of the event. The term, derived from nuclear physics, is rooted in science, yet it is now commonly used to address major social and intellectual movements. This is exactly what the AIMS Global Alumni Reunion was about, the marriage of science and humanity. A key component of the AIMS Global Alumni Reunion was the sharing of personal stories of how education has changed the lives of AIMS staff and alumni. Presentations brought to light the troubles that many Africans face on the road to success, from genocide in Rwanda to conflict in the DRC. Despite their almost impossible beginnings, these individuals have moved beyond a World Bank statistic to re-emerge as true African success stories. For example, Neil Turk, founder of AIMS, shared his experience of teaching in a Lesotho village, which spurred his passion for mathematical science education in Africa. He saw that there was talent in abundance in the villages of Africa.
There are kids who are very intelligent, very clever, and have everything they need to build this continent into a great one. But they don't have the chance. They never have the opportunity to get into science or engineering or to become business leaders or whatever. And all of that talent is wasted. And that lesson stuck with me very deeply and ultimately led me to think about starting AIMS.
Executive Director of AIMS' Next Einstein initiative, Terry Zomahoon, shared his moving story of living as a street child in Cotonou, Benin.
I started out my life as a statistic. My daily life growing up in the street was a cocktail of fear, sorrow, cries, hunger, thirst. It was 5 years of my life and a period of total desperation, brutal survival, with zero opportunities. If you embrace education, education will set you free.
The alumni shared some heart-wrenching stories, such as Charles and Berry Kampolo of Congo, who fled to the forest for 3 years during a coup d'etat, and Clarice Owizie, a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. Despite these obstacles, they're passionate about their own work and the work of AIMS.
AIMS is actually just a bridge between our specific family or our specific stories to where we are going.
Clarice, a musician as well as a scientist, played a self-written song about AIMS for the group.
Come everyone, we gather one energy. It's time to show our potential. Science is a field to discover. Science is a field to discover.
Perhaps one of the greatest advocates for the power of education was Her Excellency Naledi Pandor, South African Minister of Home Affairs and former Minister of Education and Minister of Science and Education. The AIMS organisers were honoured to have an address from the Minister, as it was noted that it was the Minister herself who was the first and most important political supporter of AIMS.
Without her support at that time, it is very doubtful that AIMS would exist today.
She began her address by congratulating AIMS on its great accomplishments over the past 10 years. Firstly, for existing for 10 years, and secondly, for training such high-quality young people.
We are one of those parts of the world in which many pioneers and adventurers come to begin things, but it is rare for institutions to survive. We need to develop these skills if our country and continent are to make the scientific and knowledge advances that we want to see. Historically, it's been a very serious problem and continues to be one. AIMS has forged ahead and made us all proud in contributing, expanding, and sustaining high-level, quality programs that make an indelible imprint on the quality and success of African graduates.
Minister Pandor spoke to the great link between science and development and assured the audience that she advocates for science and technology as a means of greater development.
So scientific infrastructure and investment in research is very closely linked to our investment in development. And as Africa, we must never allow anyone to cause us to believe that investing in science and mathematics is esoteric and not linked to development.
Terry Zomahoon thanked the Minister and asked the AIMS board members to join him in awarding the Minister with a certificate of recognition.
Well, I'm deeply honoured. Thank you very much to AIMS. Really, I don't think we deserve recognition for doing what we must do. These are things that our governments must recognise as necessary. We must invest in the talent we have in our continent, invest in our young people, build our own base of an intellectual pool that can make the difference that we need on the African continent and indeed throughout the world.
The keynote address was given by Ben Turek, former anti-apartheid activist and current chairman of the Ethics Committee in the South African Parliament. He noted that AIMS is creating a critical mass to transform Africa. He stressed the need for increased African technology.
That what we use in Africa is not made in Africa. We need to change that. We need to break the dominance of Western imports into South Africa, into Africa as a whole, and start producing on the continents.
And beyond the management of industry, Turek believes there's a need for African innovation across the board, including in data, statistics, minerals, and natural resources. Neil Turek illustrated the possibilities for the alumni by drawing a comparison between them, Albert Einstein, and Nelson Mandela. He said of Einstein,
"He doesn't look so different than all of our alumni." He's a young man, probably slightly irritating because he was so clever. And he came from a very disadvantaged background. And in fact, Jews were only allowed to enter universities in Europe around the middle of the 19th century. And when they entered, when they were finally allowed to enter technical field like maths and physics and engineering, they had something to prove. They had a point to prove, that Jews are not inferior beings, human beings. They are every bit as able as anyone else. And the consequence was that when this wave of young Jews entered maths and physics, they actually transformed both fields. And as I'll explain, I believe that at the start of the 21st century, physics may be again about to be transformed, and I hope Africa will play its role. Now, as well as Einstein that motivates us, there's another hero we should think about today. Nelson Mandela, also young, for me represents humanity. the spirit of determination to work for the common good and for the improvement and upliftment of everyone.
Turek made the link between the two great icons by stating this.
Yes, we are geeks. We are technical people. We want to understand maths and science and technology. But we also have hearts. And we also have, we make friends and connections all over Africa and all over the world. And we dedicate our lives not just to our own success and discoveries, but to the discoveries which other people can make, because we believe that collectively we are much more than we are as individuals.
Nasser Faruqi, Director of Science and Innovation at the IDRC, cares deeply for the link between science and humanity.
What do we do? Well, one approach is to train our researchers not just on how to do research, but how to communicate that research.
Ingrid Winnen-Scholl, head of the science department at the Robert Bosch Stiftung Foundation in Stuttgart, had this to say.
I strongly believe that we have to have an academic human capital in Africa, and I think it is the STEM scientists who will help to solve the problems, but we shouldn't forget about the social scientists.
Data and the application of data is central to African development. Angelina M. Latambi, from a family of 9 children in rural Tanzania, now works as a research scientist in Tanzania.
The application of the knowledge that we learned at AIMS does not only end on solving theoretical problems, but also on solving practical problems that the countries and the communities where we are coming from are facing. But we need data. So data is the main thing that is needed, because it helps us to reveal even the hidden problems that are existing in the communities.
Lutambi explained how she uses data to thwart malaria contraction in Africa. But as crucial as this data is to saving the lives of millions, there's still many challenges in data acquisition and a lack of support by governing bodies. Marshall Loth Nefo also struggles with the funding and accessibility of data.
It's a kind of egg and chicken problem. But how do you tackle this type of problems, where you have few data and you try to draw the attention of policymakers to understand that this is an important issue that needs to be tackled, and to get more money to do more research in order to get a clear understanding of the real situation?
His work looks at the link between schistosomiasis, a parasitic disease, and HIV contraction, specifically in the form of female genital schistosomiasis, FGS. He developed a mathematical model to track the interaction between the two diseases and found that FGS increases the risk of the HIV virus entering a woman's system. FGS can easily be prevented and treated and save $63 million in Zimbabwe over the next 10 years. But there's a lack of funding to continue such studies. Martin Hilbert, the Economic Affairs Officer of the United Nations, explored the need for new kinds of data collection techniques as we're now living in interconnected, digitized societies. He explained that we exist in a network society.
Some people are more connected to others, and we have to start collecting and analyzing these kind of network data in order to understand what development is. Because development is as much about who you are as about with whom you are. And only then you get a complete picture.
As the human race is now digitizing their cooperation, it's much easier to gather data to predict trends in the economy by looking at how many people recharge cell phones, or access traffic by assessing how many mobile phones are in one location at one time, or even to track levels of infectious diseases by retrieving Google search terms. All of this technology is based on differential equations and requires a background in mathematical modelling. AIMS graduates are perfectly placed to take on this low-cost and cutting-edge data analysis to address social, economic and environmental problems. As Hilbert explained, the world's information is being stored digitally. Roy Singham, founder and chairman of ThoughtWorks, Inc., presented a revolutionary view on the Western monopoly of digital media. He looked at how the West, primarily the United States, has the rights to the vast majority of digitized information from around the globe, how this is used in surveillance, and how only a handful of companies own basically everything that is put online. Singham spoke about creating an alternative model for developing IT skills and jobs in Africa. He explained that the reason there's a monopoly on software by the West is because Silicon Valley was produced by government military spending.
Here's a great quote from Google Earth. It wouldn't exist unless, the U.S. military had spent millions of dollars to put it into it. A lot of the Google satellites, all that data you're collecting, don't underestimate, we were talking about how much of it is actually funded, in fact, by U.S. military.
Likewise, India's success is also due to government intervention. They had a closed economy and developed their own telecommunications, supercomputers and infrastructure. The future for African technology needs to take a different path from the USA, who already own everything, and India, who has sky-high poverty rates. He had this to say to the alumni.
For whom are we building this science is really still the question you guys are going to have to think about as your generation.
Africa has the opportunity to redefine the link between technology and social change, to assure that Africa cares for its own people. But for this to happen, the governments need to come on board. Kojo Chinnery-Hess, software engineer and co-founder of SoftTribe Limited, mentioned that Africa has a wealth of raw materials, but needs innovators to use those raw materials to make finished goods. A key to linking people from the village to the global level is technology.
Now, all these people in the villages, they're not stupid. They have mobile phones, and they make things. They may not make cars, but they make things. There are things that they make. And there's demand for those things in the African diaspora, in the big cities, and across the world. Now, the big problem they have is that they don't know how to export something to Japan, and they don't know how to basically communicate and market in Japan to be able to export their stuff.
As a solution to this, he started Shop Africa 53, which is an African version of eBay, where someone on a village level can sell directly to a buyer abroad. A spirited roundtable discussion was held on gender and science, which assessed how women can better integrate and excel in mathematical science careers. Participants agreed that gender roles are societally derived constructs, and gender equality is therefore the equal access of both women and men, regardless of sex, into various spheres and sectors. In this case, equal opportunities for men and women to excel in the mathematical sciences, which are particularly male-dominated. The question was addressed as to whether or not Africa should take the fossil fuel path of the developed world or leapfrog into renewable energies. At the AIMS Global Alumni Reunion, a strong case was made for the latter. Jita Govan, one of South Africa's foremost sustainability thinkers, argued for the creation of a sustainable community and explained the work of Community Grill and their flagship project, West Cape, outside of Cape Town, which will create homes for about 200,000 households. DK Oseosare, an architect and designer, spoke of solutions to Africa's increasing urbanization and how conventional city planning methods are neither effective nor relevant to local communities, forcing 72% of urban Africans to live in extremely poor conditions. He looked at the informal setup of local kiosks in Tema, Ghana, and found that they're actually incredibly innovative spaces, while seen as a mosaic of chaos by most Westerners. He figured out a way to build such informal structures more cheaply, that would serve the needs of the communities with materials that were readily available. He found bamboo as a better alternative to metal containers, as it's free, can be replenished, and reused as charcoal. He's also experimenting with the setting up of solar-powered kiosks in Nigeria. By the end of the event, the 240 people in the room from 44 countries, countless cultures and varied life experiences left feeling they'd shared in a very special experience together. With the momentum from this forum, the AIMS Global Alumni Reunion is certain to be a catalyst for change in the Africa of tomorrow.